People love labels. They rely on them because labels are easy. Too young, too old, too early, too late. Words designed to reduce complexity into something manageable, something safe. Numbers become shortcuts for judgment, a way to avoid understanding what cannot be measured. But the heart does not operate on spreadsheets. It does not calculate timelines or negotiate based on years. It recognizes signals long before logic asks for proof. This connection was never planned. There was no roadmap, no checklist outlining how it should look or when it should begin. It arrived naturally without permission, without strategy. It unfolded the way gravity works, quietly but inevitably. Once it started, resistance felt pointless. You do not argue with momentum. You learn how to move with it. Yes, you're older than me, and yes, the world noticed. It always does. The world notices anything that doesn't fit neatly into its predefined categories. It asked questions that didn't need answers, and offered warnings, rooted more in fear than understanding. Risks were highlighted endlessly, while rewards were ignored completely. What no one asked was the only question that mattered. Does it feel true? Because when something is true, it does not request approval. Truth does not wait for consensus. It exists regardless of comfort or agreement. Age did not teach you how to see me. Experience did. Time did not create this connection. Clarity did. You understood things before I could explain them. You listened beyond words and responded beyond expectation. You challenged my thinking without trying to control it, and in doing so, you sharpened my perspective rather than slowing my progress. My heart never debated this. It did not negotiate or hesitate. It chose before my mind could catch up. That choice was not reckless. It was immediate recognition, the kind that bypasses fear because it recognizes alignment. Progress in every form has always come from those willing to ignore the rule book written by fear. Every meaningful breakthrough begins with trusting what others doubt. Love is no exception. This is not about rebellion or defiance. It is about alignment, about recognizing when something fits, even if it disrupts expectations. Some connections are not convenient. They are necessary. They push you forward instead of holding you still. They demand growth instead of comfort. They feel inevitable, not because they are easy, but because they are right. So yes, you are older than me. But my heart never had a choice. Because when something is real, choice becomes irrelevant. Real connection does not feel optional. It feels directional. Age is often treated as a definitive measurement, as if a number alone can explain compatibility, depth, or destiny. People rely on it because it is visible and measurable. But real connection operates beneath the surface, where numbers lose meaning and intuition takes over. Alignment does not happen because two people were born within a certain range of years. It happens when values synchronize, when curiosity meets curiosity, when two minds move at compatible speeds, even if they started at different points in time. Age measures how long someone has existed, not how deeply they understand, how clearly they think, or how honestly they care. Connection is built through shared perspective, not shared timelines. Two people can be the same age and feel worlds apart. Understanding comes from how someone listens, how they respond under pressure, how they process failure, and how they envision the future. These traits are not age-dependent. They are the result of experience, reflection, and intentional growth. When those elements align, interaction feels efficient, almost inevitable, like two systems designed independently that suddenly integrate perfectly. Conversations flow without effort. Silence feels comfortable instead of awkward. Growth feels accelerated rather than forced. Society prefers age because it offers predictability, but meaningful bonds are rarely predictable. They challenge assumptions and disrupt expectations. A genuine connection does not ask whether it makes sense on paper. It proves itself through clarity, trust, and mutual respect. In those moments, age becomes background noise, a detail rather than a determinant. The illusion is believing that time defines readiness or worth, when in reality awareness does. Some people arrive early to understanding. Others take longer routes. When two paths intersect at the right moment, the connection does not check the calendar. It responds to alignment. People like to believe that every important moment in life is the result of deliberate choice, as if the mind calmly evaluates options before deciding what matters. But the most defining moments rarely work that way. They arrive without warning, without invitation, without regard for timing. Choice implies equal alternatives. Inevitability appears when no alternative feels real. When something is inevitable, the decision has already been made long before logic attempts to justify it. The heart recognizes direction faster than the mind can analyze risk. You do not choose gravity. You respond to it. Certain connections pull you forward with a force that does not require agreement. only awareness. Resistance may exist, but the pull remains constant. That persistence is not obsession. It is clarity revealing itself before permission is granted. Inevitability unsettles people because it exposes truth. It strips away illusion and leaves only what is real. When something aligns with who you are becoming, hesitation loses authority. From the outside, it looks reckless. From the inside, it feels like recognition. Not something rushed, but something that took longer than expected to surface. The mind eventually catches up, not to choose, but to understand why there was never a choice at all. Some paths do not present themselves as options. They present themselves as outcomes already in motion. Emotional courage is often misunderstood. It does not announce itself loudly. It shows up quietly in moments where walking away would be easier, and conformity would feel safer. Avoiding emotion is not strength, it is preservation. Emotional courage is choosing presence over protection, honesty over image, truth over comfort. It is allowing yourself to be seen without guarantees, to invest without certainty, to care without control. This courage is not reckless. It measures risk against meaning rather than safety against fear. When someone acts with emotional courage, they stop outsourcing validation. Confidence comes not from certainty, but from trust in adaptability and growth. Fear becomes information rather than a barrier. Emotions become data rather than weaknesses. Growth emerges not from comfort, but from exposure to difference. Difference introduces friction, and friction is where refinement happens. Contrasting experiences expand perspective. They compress time by transferring lessons that would otherwise take years to learn. Difference becomes leverage. It accelerates awareness. It sharpens decisions. It transforms connection into evolution. And that is why some connections defy labels. Not because they ignore reality, but because they understand it more deeply. It introduces an energy that is not burdened by tradition or restrained by fear of change. This energy is curious, adaptive, and forward-looking. It questions assumptions rather than inheriting them and moves toward possibility instead of familiarity. On its own, this energy is powerful. But when it meets experience, something even more effective begins to form. Experience provides context. It carries pattern recognition, perspective, and restraint earned through lived outcomes. When energy and experience intersect, wisdom gains speed and ambition gains direction. One prevents recklessness while the other prevents stagnation. The result is not compromise but refinement. In this dynamic, the relationship becomes less about balance and more about optimization. Each person strengthens what the other lacks without losing their own identity. Growth does not require dilution. It requires alignment. Instead of competing for control, both sides contribute clarity. Most people avoid difference because it disrupts ego. Difference exposes blind spots, highlights gaps in knowledge, and challenges comfort zones that feel safe but limiting. Avoidance feels protective, but it quietly halts development. Growth by nature is uncomfortable. Real progress requires exposure, not insulation. When difference is approached with respect rather than insecurity, it becomes a catalyst. It forces self-examination without hostility and invites humility without humiliation. Learning accelerates when assumptions are challenged. The presence of someone different does not threaten growth. It demands it. In that environment, progress feels natural rather than forced. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to evolve rather than compete. Advancement happens through exchange, not dominance. Noise is everywhere. Opinions, assumptions, warnings, and projections circulate constantly. Much of it comes from people who have never stood where you stand or felt what you feel. Their certainty is easy because they are detached from consequence. Ignoring the noise is often misunderstood as arrogance. In reality, it is discipline. It is the ability to distinguish between information that sharpens, direction and distraction that weakens resolve. Focus is not accidental. It is protected. External voices tend to grow louder when a path does not look familiar. When something challenges convention, it invites commentary. Society is comfortable with repetition and uneasy with deviation. That unease often disguises itself as concern. Advice without context is rarely useful. It reflects the speaker's limitations more than your reality. Listening to every opinion dilutes clarity and replaces instinct with hesitation. Direction suffers when attention is scattered. Focus requires filtration. Not every signal deserves attention. Progress depends on eliminating unnecessary inputs. When someone knows what matters, they stop explaining themselves to those who are not invested in the outcome. Energy is finite. Spending it on justification reduces the capacity to execute. Ignoring the noise is not avoidance. It is choosing alignment over approval. It is the conscious decision to move forward without consensus. There is a difference between feedback and interference. Feedback challenges you to think deeper. Interference pulls you off course. Learning to tell the difference is a critical skill. It allows growth without surrendering direction. The strongest decisions are rarely made with crowd agreement. Most breakthroughs look irrational before they work. If you wait for validation, you move at the speed of average opinion. If you trust clarity, you move at the speed of conviction. Resistance often increases as momentum builds. The closer something gets to becoming real, the more noise surrounds it. That resistance is not a signal to stop. It is often evidence that something meaningful is taking shape. Ignoring the noise does not mean shutting down awareness. It means prioritizing internal alignment over external comfort when the internal signal is clear. Awareness guides, distraction delays. Commitment is often mistaken for obligation, as if it is imposed by pressure or expectation. In truth, real commitment begins when external influence fades and internal clarity takes over. It is not forced. It is recognized. When something feels right at a fundamental level, commitment stops feeling heavy and starts feeling natural. It does not require constant motivation. It sustains itself through coherence. What feels right is not impulsive or careless. It is the result of accumulated understanding, lived experience, and self-awareness converging into certainty. That certainty is not loud. It is steady. Sometimes certainty appears quietly. It persists without urgency and remains unaffected by doubt or delay. Logic may question timing or outcome, but internal alignment remains consistent. That consistency becomes the foundation of commitment. Many people hesitate because they confuse uncertainty with wrongness, but uncertainty exists in every meaningful path. Commitment does not remove risk. It accepts risk without resistance. Commitment is the decision to move forward even when the future is undefined. It trusts adaptability over prediction. It values responsiveness over control. Choosing what feels right means choosing coherence over comfort and truth over convenience. This kind of commitment reshapes behavior. Actions become deliberate. Energy becomes focused. Distractions lose relevance. When someone is aligned internally, they no longer seek constant reassurance. Validation becomes optional rather than necessary. Direction is set. Effort flows toward execution instead of explanation. Commitment grounded in authenticity creates resilience. Challenges are processed as variables, not threats. The foundation remains intact because it was built on alignment rather than pressure. This type of commitment does not trap a person. It frees them. It removes internal conflict and replaces it with momentum. Progress feels lighter because resistance has been resolved internally. In the end, everything comes down to alignment. Not age, not opinion, not expectation. The moments that shape a life are rarely chosen by comfort or consensus. They are recognized through clarity. When connection replaces calculation, inevitability replaces hesitation, emotional courage allows truth to surface. Difference becomes a catalyst rather than a barrier. External noise loses its influence. What remains is focus, direction, and quiet confidence. Confidence that comes from honoring what is real instead of what is approved. Growth follows those who trust internal signals, commit without apology, and move forward with intention. When the heart and mind stop arguing and start cooperating, progress becomes natural. Momentum becomes unstoppable. Trust what you feel. Protect your focus. Move forward with confidence. Thank you for listening.